Welcome to Do IT Yourself. In today's show, our course for the day is using Camtasia 9, an advanced video editing tool from TechSmith. Today's product highlight is Sharp Social, an IBM Watson-based artificial intelligence that does sentiment analysis for your social media accounts. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello and welcome. Now in this video you are looking at the website TechSmith, and TechSmith is where you would buy your legal copy of Camtasia. If you don't have a copy of Camtasia, all you'll need to do is to go to the techsmith.com website and click the Buy Now button. Now you can buy a download version or you can have a disk sent to you, and you can also have a maintenance agreement. Now what the maintenance agreement will do is it will allow you to have Camtasia upgraded for 50% of the cost of a new license. Typically you would have to pay the full price of an upgrade, but if you do the maintenance agreement you'll be able to get that at half price, and then they've got some other benefits here also. Now the other thing you'll want to take note of is going to be the area for system requirements, and you'll find that in the leftmost corner. And if you go to this link, you want to make sure that your system matches up with these system requirements. And since Camtasia now installs on both Windows and the Mac, you'll want to make sure that you understand the individual requirements. And then there are some additional requirements here for Windows that you'll want to take note of if you're going to be using some of the add-ons. For example, you'll likely be using the add-on for PowerPoint. You want to make sure that you are able to use these, as well as the video recording equipment. So now if everything now checks out for you, and you don't have a current copy of Camtasia, then you can just click the Add to Cart button, and then you can actually go ahead and pick up Camtasia Studio. Now it's quite possible that you may have a previous version of Camtasia already, and if that is the case, then Camtasia will typically send you a message when you open the program giving you the option that you can actually go to upgrade. When you get this message, if you don't have the most current version of Camtasia, which is Camtasia 9, you want to click the Upgrade Now button. It will typically bring you to the pricing area, and you'll notice that it is going to be about half of the cost as if you were going to purchase it outright. Now the other thing is, of course, you can actually go ahead and get the maintenance agreement also, and then that will add on an additional fee. Now once you've done that, you can click the Add to Cart button, and you'll be provided with the opportunity to get some other upsells. However, if you don't need them, all you need to do is either pick up the Camtasia upgrade and or the maintenance agreement. Now in some cases, if you wait just a minute, you'll notice that Camtasia or TechSmith will offer you a 5% discount, and there is no special science for you to get this discount. Typically they'll add it to your account if you don't check out right away. So once you have your 5% discount, if your pricing is what you want, then you can go ahead and check out. Now when you get your upgrade certificate, you are going to want to keep this information. And the reason is that Camtasia 9 will run side by side with any other Camtasia version that you have. So in other words, it's not going to replace version 8 or version 7 or whatever version that you have. It can actually work side by side with that other version. So you are going to want to take this information, put it inside of your password manager or wherever it is that you keep your licenses, as well as your emails. So once you've done this, go ahead and download the new version of Camtasia. Now if you're on a Windows PC, Camtasia 9 will download direct to your hard drive. Just click the Save button and Camtasia will start to download. Now you're going to see Camtasia in your corner if you're using Chrome. It's going to be in a directory if you're using Internet Explorer or Firefox. You want to go ahead and click the executable file and get started installing Camtasia. Camtasia will ask you if you want to accept the license terms, and you'll want to read them if you haven't read them and make sure that you understand the terms. Now a couple of things of note that you are agreeing to. One is that your license that you're purchasing is non-transferable. So technically, if you wanted to sell your version of Camtasia, you are not allowed to sell it, and you're agreeing not to sell it. The other thing you're agreeing to is that Camtasia can be installed on 2 of your computers to be used by one person, yourself, and you are technically not supposed to use them both at the same time. So if you want to run a production machine, you'll have to make sure that you're running that production machine at a point in time at which you're not using the machine that you are currently using. So once you've read through the license, you'll want to go ahead and accept the terms and then click install. And then Camtasia will go through an installation process, and we're actually going to do this off camera. And once Camtasia has completed the installation process, we will come back in the next video. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. You are now looking at the open interface for Camtasia version 9. And when you open the program the first time, provided that you have put in your registration key, you will see that you can either start with a new project or a new recording. Now, when you start with new project, Camtasia is actually going to open up the editing interface. And typically, you're going to get a screen that's going to ask you if you want to update Camtasia. You are going to want to say yes, and you'll be told that you're running the most current version of Camtasia, especially when you first start. Now, another way to start Camtasia is to start with a new recording. And if you open the interface and you click new recording, the recording interface is going to show up. And you'll be able to see where you are going to be able to record your screen or to record a PowerPoint. Now, the other thing you can do to start Camtasia is to open an existing project. Now, in this particular case, we have just opened or downloaded the new Camtasia, so we don't have any new projects in Camtasia 9. However, what we can do is we can open projects that we have created in other versions. In fact, if you go to any project that you have created in a previous version, you're going to notice that the icon has changed to the icon that's used with Camtasia 9. Now, that doesn't mean that your files have been changed to Camtasia 9 files. It only means that the icon has changed. If you open this project in Camtasia 9, you can actually update the document to be used with the new system. So for example, if we were to go and we were to take one of these files, which was created in a previous version of Camtasia, and we were to open it up, Camtasia is going to give you a message that this project was created in an earlier version of Camtasia Studio, and if you want to open it, you'll be opening it, but you'll be changing it so that it'll only open then in Camtasia 9. You will not be able to use this file again in Camtasia 8. So this is something that you'll want to be aware of with projects that you have created in previous versions of Camtasia. These are not backwards compatible. Once you have changed them over, you won't be able to change them back. So what we're going to do is we're going to say no. We're going to leave that document as it is. The one final thing that we'll want to show before we go to the next video is that if you have entered into the editing screen, you can actually access the recording screen also by going to the top left and clicking this record button. When you do that, then this button is going to show up and you'll recognize this as the recording screen. And those are all the basic ways that you'll be able to enter into Camtasia Studio. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video, we are going to get familiar with some of the basic screen recording controls. Now, typically in Camtasia, what you can do is you can either open the entire program or you can open up just the recording screen. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're just going to open up the recording feature. When you open up the recording feature, you're going to have a dialog box that will allow you to customize your recording. There are going to be some basic things we want to take note of. One of the first things we're going to want to take note of is what mic we're going to be using in order to use our recording. And so you're going to use this drop down arrow and you're going to choose one of the microphones that you are going to be using. You want to use the best possible microphone with your Camtasia recording. We'll talk about that in a future video, but you can actually designate which microphone you're going to use in this dialog box. The other thing you can do is you can actually designate your webcam to be used. If you have an external webcam, you can connect it. If you have one that's internal, you can connect it. So any webcam that you want to use with Camtasia 9, you can designate it inside of this recording screen. Now, in the select area, you get a chance to determine how you're going to record your screen. You can either record your screen in a custom size or you can record the entire screen. When you choose to use the custom size, what you're going to do is you're actually going to be able to record a certain area of the screen. You can see that here. You can drag this image to the screen and adjust it. If that's not what you like, you can actually click the full screen and record the entire screen. In either case, you can determine what you want your viewer to see inside of the actual window. And we're going to actually close this now. Now there are some menus inside of the dialog box. We're going to take a look at some of those right now. In particular, we're going to go to the capture area. And you'll notice that you can actually record your screen or record your camera. And you'll notice that you can actually use what's called a hotkey, which is the F9 key. And this is very important because you will not have to control your camera with your mouse. And if you want to just start your recording, you want to do that with a button at the push of a button, you can do that with the F9 key. You can actually stop the recording with the F10 key, and those are going to come in very handy when you're actually doing your recording. Once again, you can set the area to record, and that's pretty much the same that we did when we selected the area. And then we can actually lock to application. And that means that we can actually lock the recording to a specific application. For example, let's say that all we wanted to record was the Excel application or Microsoft Excel. And if we have this spreadsheet open, what we would do then is just click lock to application, and we would be locking to the Microsoft Excel application, and it would only record Microsoft Excel and not anything in the background. Now in the next video, we'll review the effects menu, the tools menu, and the help menu. And with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to take a look at the effects menu. We have already taken a look at the capture menu in a previous video. So if you open the effects menu, you are going to see three options. The first is going to be for adding a system stamp. The next is going to be for adding a caption. Now the other is going to be for adding mouse click sounds, and then the options. Now if you go to the options, that will actually control how you'll use these two. So we're going to take a look at the options menu first, because that'll tell us how we control these two portions of the menu. When you open up the options menu, you're going to see that there is a certain way that you can actually dictate how you want the timestamp to appear. And you can actually have the elapsed time to appear. You can take out the time and date. So you can customize this. You can also customize the date and time format. Now the other thing you can do is you can actually write a caption in that will appear in your video. So for example, we can write in a phrase. Okay, so I've written in here, create video with Camtasia 9, and then I can determine how that caption is going to appear in the video. So for example, I can determine if that caption is going to appear at the bottom of the video. You can control where it's going to appear. You can put it at the top. You can put it in the middle. You can also control what the font's going to be. So we can change the font here to something else that we like. We can change the text color as well as the background color or shadow color. Now once we have something that we like, we can then click the OK button. And then we'll have a caption, and then we will have the options determined for our timestamp. Now we can also control what the sound effects are going to be. And what this menu will do is it'll determine how the mouse button sound is going to be. And so for example, if you click this button, you'll notice that there is a click. And you can actually determine how this is going to sound inside of your video. So once you have the combination that you like, you are going to click OK. And what this is going to do is now this is going to bring you back to the effects menu. And so now what we can do is we can determine if we want a system stamp to occur in the video. And we can do that by clicking this menu. And we can also determine whether or not we want a caption to occur. We can click that also. Or we can decide that we don't want either one of them, and we can uncheck them. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in the next video when we'll talk about the Tools menu of the recording toolbar.
Now, let us take a break from our course and look at the product of the day. Let us take a look at the product of the day. Let us take a look at Sharp Social, an IBM Watson-based AI that does sentiment analysis to your social media accounts and can even respond to those sentiments.
I got a question for you. How'd you like to take all your users' comments that they posted on your Facebook fan pages and YouTube videos and turn them into cash? I mean, wouldn't it be cool if you could turn all those comments into referrals, free traffic, leads, and direct sales with just the push of a button? You see, even if you don't know, there are a lot of people commenting and engaging with your brand or business or product on Facebook and YouTube all the time. And if you aren't reaching out to them the right way, you're leaving money on the table. But the problem is, reading and replying to each and every comment is a time-taking, painfully unproductive process. And all those other apps and chatbots that let you send private messages only let you send out a robotic canned reply, and worse, they only work for Facebook. Well, today, I'm excited to finally show you for the first time one of the most profitable social messaging and engagement apps ever created. Introducing Sharp Social. Sharp Social connects to your Facebook and YouTube account to scan all the comments posted and analyze them using IBM Watson's machine learning and real artificial intelligence technology to find the emotions and sentiments of each comment, and based on that sentiment or emotion, you send a custom, highly engaging private message or comment reply to each commenter. With Sharp Social, you can quickly and easily turn your user engagement and comments into profits in just a few steps. Step 1, connect and scan your Facebook and YouTube accounts for your users' comments. Step number 2, let Sharp Social use its machine learning and advanced artificial intelligence technology from IBM Watson to tell you which comments are positive, negative, or neutral, and show you the comments' emotions like happiness, anger, confusion, and more. Step number 3, send out a custom private message or comment based on the sentiments and emotions. For example, send a discount coupon to those people who are confused or complaining about the price. Ask for a share or referral to get traffic from those who are happy. Send support details to those who are upset, lost, and more. Send upsell offers or links to people who are happy and engaging with your brand. It's really that easy to use. No complicated dashboard, no weird, crazy setup, just 3 steps, and you're turning those comments into traffic, leads, and sales, all while improving your brand's reputation. So let me show you how easy it is to use.
So first, to get started, you want to create a new campaign where you can monitor the brand of your choice and connect your social profiles. You can connect both Facebook and YouTube. Then to start growing our Facebook brand and pages, click on the Facebook tab. And Sharp Social is going to show our posts in order of date with a number of likes, comments, and shares for all of them. By clicking the insights, we can get some important analytics for this particular fan page overall, including the overall fan page impressions, page engagement, page video analytics, reaction to our pages, and even locations of people who've interacted with our page. Then by clicking analytics, we can also see a bird's eye view of the total sentiment of our page, which in this case has mostly positive or neutral reactions with a small percentage negative as well. And we can also see more data like the total likes gained per page, growth of page impressions, engagement, consumption, and views, and even our daily video views. Now that stuff is crucial to success in decision making, but here's where it really starts to get good. So let's go back to our post and pick one that had a lot of reactions and comments. So now we can see all the comments for this particular post. By hovering on them, we can see the exact sentiment that the AI has assigned each one. So here's one that the AI deemed mostly positive, which makes sense because he said, "I like it." But here's one that the AI deemed negative, and we can see the user doesn't really like our price of this particular product that we were promoting in the post. So what we can do now is click on this arrow and leave a personalized reply quickly to any of these comments. Or even more powerful, we can go to the response tab here and choose to do a bulk action based on certain sentiments or emotions. So for example, everyone who left a positive comment on this particular post, we can choose to send them a reply asking them to share this deal with their friends since they in fact did like it, or maybe showing them another one of our posts that advertises a similar product to make more money from them and give them a better experience in the process. But we wouldn't want to do that to people who had a negative experience with our post, right? So we can do bulk post actions to negative comments or sentiments, like deleting them or sending them a private message asking them why they don't like our offer, for example. We can do bulk actions for specific emotions too. Like we can send mass replies or private messages to people just for one specific emotion. Now, how powerful is that to grow your page and engage with potential customers, huh? And we can dive into meaningful analytics and insights for just that specific post, like the impressions, engagement, videos, and reactions, as well as see the overall sentiments and overall emotional breakdown of our post. But Sharp Social isn't just for fan pages. You can do this exact same thing with other social channels like YouTube. But instead of posts, now we can have the AI analyze emotional responses and sentiment to our videos. Like the Facebook section, we can get a broad insight to the overall stats of our YouTube channel and overall analytics like the overall sentiment of our YouTube channel, our YouTube subscriber growth, likes and shares and dislikes rate, views this month, subscribers lost this month, even the estimated time that has been spent on our channel this month. Then we can dive into each video individually and see the sentiment and breakdown of each emotion for each comment on that particular YouTube video that we posted. And again, we can reply individually or click response and do bulk actions based on sentiments or specific emotions like deleting the comment or sending a reply to it. And of course, we can see specific insights like YouTube card clicks, for example, or the view percentage for this specific video, and the overall sentiments and emotional responses to it as well. So now, instead of sending canned replies like all the other bots do, you can send personalized messages fast with real AI technology based off of real emotions, which is what social media is really all about. This is going to skyrocket your Facebook growth as well as your video channels too.
See how easy that was? Sharp Social is the world's first and only smart social messaging and user engagement cloud-based app. With Sharp Social, now you can see what your audience is feeling and send targeted responses to all of them at just the push of a button. Just imagine the possibilities. So you can protect your reputation, send support messages to people who are feeling angry or confused, and shut down the negativity before it escalates. Turn neutral followers into buyers, send coupons to knock people off the fence, convert confused fans into paying customers. You can send FAQs, additional info, customer support links, or other content to convert the confused into cash. Leverage happy customers. Send a share a referral link to anyone who's feeling happy about your brand. By being able to see the sentiment and emotional status of anybody who mentions or interacts with you online, you can respond appropriately and immediately right from your dashboard instead of sending the same canned reply to everyone like the other apps do. With Sharp Social, you can finally turn your comments into cash, get targeted traffic, leads and direct sales, improve trust, customer service, response times, increase fan page responsive scores, protect your reputation, turn negative comments into sales, boost conversions, separate yourself from the competition, save hours of backbreaking work, all with our 100% automated system. And best of all, Sharp Social is 100% Facebook and YouTube compliant. This is your one-stop shop, the last social messaging app you're ever going to need. Manage your Facebook and YouTube from one dashboard, engage your users, reply publicly to comments or privately, and turn them into profits.
Let us go back to our course, using Camtasia 9.
Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to take a look at the Tools menu in the recording toolbar. And when we take a look at the Tools menu, you're going to notice that you have Camtasia and Screencast here. Now Camtasia, when you click this link, this will actually show you the editing toolbox. So if I click this, we'll see the screen that we have seen before in the previous video. And so you'll notice that the editing field comes up. When we go to Tools and we go to Screencast, what will happen is that your browser will open up screencast.com, which is a website that will interact with your Camtasia. We will be talking about that in a future video. And there you'll see we have opened up to screencast.com. Now when we go to the Tools menu and we go to the Options section, you're going to notice 4 sections: General, Inputs, Hotkeys, and Programs. Now all of these things will be here by default, and for the most part you won't want to change them unless you have a reason to. We're going to focus on the hotkeys in particular. That will be the one that you'll probably use the most. Now, these hotkeys are going to be keyboard combinations that you can use while you're recording. So, for example, if when you're recording, if you want to pause the recording and you hit F9, the recording will pause. If you want to stop the recording and you hit F10, the recording will stop. If you want to use the marker and you hit Control M, you can pull up the marker, and the same thing with the screen draw. You can also select a region while you're recording if you choose a certain keyboard combination. Right now, one is not selected. If you want to hide the tray icon, you can do that by selecting a certain keyboard combination. Now, you can always use the default settings if you click Restore Defaults. Now, one thing that you will want to be aware of is that your recordings are going to be saved in a proprietary Camtasia format, TREC. If you want to save it to a more common format, you can do that with the AVI format. But for the most part, you will probably be using the TREC, and that is what we will be using during the duration of this course. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to talk about the recording toolbar, and we're going to talk about the help menu. Now what you're going to notice is that you can get specific help for the Camtasia recorder, or the recording toolbar, which you're looking at here. You can access tutorials, technical support, or you can send feedback to TechSmith. Now one thing that you'll want to note about Camtasia, whether you are looking at the recording toolbar or you're looking at the editing screen, is that you can get specific help for everything that you have purchased from Camtasia Studio or from TechSmith. And you'll notice that when you come to the editing screen, you'll see that you can actually sign into the software where you have Camtasia Studio. So what you'll want to do here is you're going to want to connect to the TechSmith server. Once you enter the email address that you have associated with your software, you're going to want to put in the password that you created. Once you've done that, then you'll notice that your email address will be at the top. Your TechSmith account will be listed as part of your Camtasia software. Now this will mean that when you access technical support, you will actually be able to get specialized help. So we're going to go ahead and click technical support right here. Now in most cases you should already be signed into the TechSmith website. If you're not, you want to go ahead and sign in at the top right here. And if you have any problem whatsoever, you can submit a ticket to TechSmith to help you to sort out your account. Now what's important about accessing your TechSmith account, and let's go ahead and enter our personal account. You'll notice here that anything that you've ever purchased from TechSmith is actually listed along with the software key. In particular, you'll notice that here is our Camtasia 9 license that we can see right here if we ever need the key for any reason. And this is important in case we have to move the software to a new PC, or if we have to use it someplace where our personal PC is not available. Now, if you have a maintenance agreement, it will be present inside of your account online, and then your account will have all of your pertinent contact information. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about the recorded inputs. Now you're going to notice three separate pieces of the recorded inputs. The first you'll notice on the left hand side is your camera, and there is a drop down arrow here. If you click that arrow, you're going to notice that you've got all of the webcam options that you can use on your particular PC. you are also going to notice that there is an options section. Now when you click this options button or link, it's going to take you back to the options screen. And we actually do need to do this for the camera. So let's do that right now. So if there's anything in particular that you'll want to change about your device properties, and this is going to be specific to your device or your formatting. And again, this will be specific to your particular device. If you change that device, each one of these are going to be different, and you can actually change the settings for each individual device when you're going to use it with Camtasia for a particular recording. Now, when you leave this setting and you actually click OK, this is the setting that's going to be there for the next recording. And so this will effectively be your default setting. If you ever want to go back to the default setting, you'll come back to this page for inputs and click Restore Defaults. You'll also notice that there is an audio button. You click the down arrow and you'll see all of your microphone input options. If you have an internal microphone, if you have an external microphone, everything that you have plugged into your personal computer, you will see that option here. Now the other thing that you're going to see is that you can choose to record the system audio. So for example, if you have audio playing in the background on your PC, you can actually record it. If you have something that is going to make some kind of audio sound, you can actually record that into your video. This is going to be especially helpful if you are recording a webinar of some kind and you want to make sure that you're getting it. You will want to record your system audio. And just as you did with the camera, you have options here. It's going to take you back to the options menu. And again, what we can do is we can adjust the level of the microphone. We could have more audio going into the recording or less. We can actually change the audio. And every audio setting we're going to be able to change through this audio button. If you ever want to go back to the default setting, you can click Restore Defaults. The one other thing you're going to notice is that your capture frame rate is 30 frames per second as the default setting. You can actually change that and make it less if for some reason you cannot process a video at 30 frames per second. You can go down to 15, 10, or 1. But it's advisable to leave this at the default setting. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. Now we can also control the audio input from the front of the recording toolbar. We can adjust that audio. And that is all that you'll need to know to get started with your recorded input session. Now you'll notice here that this, if we hover over this area, that we have our webcam, or what is the default for our webcam. And we can actually see what our webcam is actually going to show people by hovering over this button and depending on which webcam we have selected. So if we want to know what our webcam is going to look like wherever we have that webcam, we can hover over this button and this will give us a preview in real time. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about the select area portion of your recording toolbar. And if you go to the drop-down menu, you're going to notice a couple of sections. You're going to notice a section that says widescreen, standard, and recent areas. Now widescreen and standard represent the aspect ratio. And in most cases, video that is done and posted to YouTube and other common forms of video sharing, they're going to have a widescreen aspect of 16:9. That would mean that you're either going to shoot in the highest resolution at 1080 or 720 or 480. But you want to make sure that you're matching the widescreen aspect of your screen. You can also shoot in a standard aspect. And again, this really depends on your screen. You can either shoot in a higher resolution or a lower resolution. You are now looking at PowerPoint, and one of the things that you'll notice if you go to the design section of your PowerPoint and you go to the slide size, you will notice that you can either choose the standard aspect or you can choose the widescreen aspect. And again, this is how you will want to match your PowerPoint presentation with your actual video or your actual screen. Now, when you use the wrong aspect ratio, what can happen is that your video can appear stretched or out of proportion. So when you are watching a video that has been recorded in the 4:3 aspect ratio, but you're watching it on the wide screen, it can either be stretched or it can have the sides cut off or truncated. So again, you want to make sure that you're going to record in widescreen when possible. And if not, if you're going to use the aspect ratio of 4:3, you want to record in as high a resolution as possible. But in many cases, the most common format is going to be that you'll want to use the 1080 or 720 aspect ratio within 16.9. So once again, one thing that Camtasia will allow us to do is to lock to a particular application. And in this particular case, we can lock to the calculator if we want to record just the calculator. If we want to make sure that we're not locked to an application and we want to select the area, we can just push the custom button. We push the custom button, and as we have discovered, as we have discussed in a previous video, we can move this screen around to determine where we're going to actually record. And if we're just going to work with the full screen, we can do that by clicking the full screen button. The one last thing that you'll notice about the recording toolbar is going to be particularly helpful if you use 2 monitors or 3 monitors or multiple monitors. The recording toolbar can be moved to one of your other screens. So if you wanted to focus on recording the screen that you're looking, you can actually do that, and you can actually remove this recording toolbar any place that you actually want by just clicking your mouse and moving it where you want it to be. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're actually going to go through a brief recording process so you can get an understanding of what's actually going to happen when you hit the record button. Now we're going to record the screen that you're looking at in front of you, and in order to do that, we're just going to hit the red record button if we have all of our settings in place. And we hit the red record button. You'll notice that we get the opportunity to change our caption. So we'll call that Create Video with Camtasia 9 Test. And then we'll click OK. Now we're going to see this throughout this course because we're using 2 forms of Camtasia Studio in order to record the course. You will not see this error message. So just to get rid of the error message, I'm going to click OK so that we can then see the countdown before we actually start recording. Once again, this you will not see in your recording process. We're going to click OK. Then you're going to see Camtasia Studio start the countdown. And right now, we are now recording our screen. Now, one thing you're going to notice right away is that the recording toolbar is no longer visible in front of us, and it's actually hidden down on the toolbar. So it actually goes away, and it appears at the bottom. If we want to see what's actually happening with our recording toolbar, we can do that, but it's going to bring it into the screen where our recording is. Now, let's do that right now. Now you'll notice that this is actually now going to be part of the recording. Now what's happening on the toolbar is that it's actually counting the elapsed time. If we have our camera showing, it's showing, and it is actually showing us where we can actually pause the recording and stop it. Now once again, we have configured hotkeys in order to do this, and we'll actually do this in a future video where we'll show you how the hotkeys are actually going to work. So now we're going to go ahead and minimize this so that the sample recording that you see will actually show this screen. Now the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually just go to youtube.com and we're just going to start a video. Now when we start this video, there is actually going to be sound, and that sound will actually be part of the video. So we're going to now just go back to the screen here, and once again this video is now still recording. Now when we're complete with this recording, we can either hit the F10 button as our hotkey, or we can just hit stop. Now once again, you'll notice that this toolbar is not appearing. If we bring it into our video, it'll appear here, and we don't want to do that in order to stop our actual video. And that's the case where we want to have our hotkeys. We want to use our hotkeys so that we do not have to go and pick up this toolbar in order to stop the video. Of course, what we can also do, remember, is we can put it onto another screen if we're using a second screen, either to the left or to the right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click stop, and then what's going to happen is Camtasia is going to start making this into an editable video. So you'll notice that the editing screen will come up, and Camtasia will actually place the edit onto the toolbar. Now we will go through an editing process in another video. You'll also notice that the webcam was actually enabled and is in the corner. We can actually remove that webcam from the recording by just going to delete it. Okay, so now once we have completed this, you've actually gone to see now some of the basics as to how it's going to work. We will walk in depth through how you're going to use Camtasia to record your screen, or to record a PowerPoint, or even to record your talking head videos. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. You are now looking at a sample video that we're going to be shooting, and we're going to actually shoot the recording of a PowerPoint presentation. And what you're going to notice is that as we get ready to, or as we're previewing our recording toolbar, you'll notice that the audio is going in, and we're using the microphone, we're using our external mic. What we're using right now is we're using one of the system webcams. We're actually going to change that. We're going to turn that on to our webcam, and that's going to actually make the presenter viewable. Now this is now blurred out at this point, but you'll notice that this is a camera and that the person is actually going to be visible when you hover over it. The other thing we're going to do is we're not going to have a timestamp. So we're going to take this and we're going to get rid of the annotations. And then we are now ready to start with our video. Now in a later video, we're actually going to show you a couple of ways that you can actually record PowerPoint presentations, but we're going to shoot this video so that we can then get familiar with the editing interface. So in order to get started, we have our recording toolbar set, we have our mic ready, we have our webcam ready, we're now ready to record. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to hit the record button. Okay, so you'll notice that the Camtasia is now not visible. And in order to record this presentation, what we're going to do is we're just going to go and we're going to make sure that our slide is the right dimension. And then we're going to start our slideshow. So we're going to advance the slides, and we would actually talk through this, and we're going to just continue the PowerPoint. We complete the presentation, and now that we are complete, we can then stop our video. And we can do that by getting the camera back here and then clicking the stop button. And so now our video is on these two tracks. And what we're going to do now is we're going to get to know some of the features on the actual editing screen. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to look at some of the basics of the editing screen. And this is where you will have your projects and where you will do your editing. Now you're going to notice right away at the very bottom of the editing screen, you'll see that your video is down in two basic components. You'll see that one component is primarily audio. It actually says audio there. And it'll actually look like audio because you can see the peaks and valleys in the way that I actually spoke when we were recording the video. The other is the screen, and that's where you see this particular track. And you'll see that this is going to be primarily the video. Now, when you do take a look at the elements on the timeline, one thing that you can do is you can right-click this element, and you're going to notice that there is a link here that says separate audio and video. When you click that link, what's going to happen is that you will see that all of the audio is now separate. So for example, you will see that what appears on the screen is actually here. What is heard in the system in audio is now in one track, and what is now recorded is now on one track, or what is spoken into the microphone. And all three of these components actually make up your video. You can take out any component that you want. So for example, if you were to have some kind of audio noise come into your background or some kind of music that you didn't want there, you can actually take that out through the system audio on your timeline. You can actually edit the entire piece, of course, by keeping them together. So for example, if we wanted to go backwards, we could go back and do the undo button. And that'll actually put those two pieces back together. Now the timeline has a couple of elements. You're going to notice that the timeline has markings at the very top, and those represent the seconds. You'll notice that you have a scroll or a cursor bar that will actually take you through each component of the video. So as I drag this cursor, you're going to notice a couple of things. You're going to notice that this indicator moves through to the end of the video. What also is going to happen is that the video is going to advance, and you'll notice that we move it backwards. So both of these features make it easy for us to go in and actually do the editing of a particular video. We can actually play the video, and what we're going to do right now is I'm going to hit the Control Home button. It's going to take me back to the beginning, and what I'm going to do is hit the play button. And you're going to notice, and you can actually hear some of the audio in the background. And what's happening here is that the editing screen is going to allow us to listen in real time to the video that we just created so that we can hear things in order to edit them. But you can do it visually by looking at the timeline. Now another element of the timeline is that if we want to take a look at the timeline as a whole, we can actually reduce the size without changing the nature of the timeline. We can do that by using this measuring rod. If we click the minus, you'll notice that the timeline gets smaller on our screen so that we can see the whole thing. If we need to stretch it so that we can see something a little more in depth, we can stretch it using the plus. We can actually delete the entire audio portion from the timeline by highlighting the audio and then clicking the delete button. Then the audio is gone. If we want to go backwards, we go back to the undo button and it's back there. We can do the same thing on the timeline with the screen capture, and we can actually hit the delete button. It goes away, and then we can hit the undo button and it will come back. So the timeline basically gives us a glimpse of our entire video and what's happening. And anything that you don't want to have in it, Camtasia allows you to separate it into a track, and then it allows you to then delete the portion that you don't want there. So if we want to take out the system audio, we can. So in our next video, we'll take a look at another aspect of the editing screen, we have now looked at the timeline and you've got a basic orientation as to what it does. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in the next video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to do a brief overview of some of the timeline tools here. And these are going to be tools that you're going to be using in the editing process. And if you recall from the last video, we actually took out the system audio. And one thing that we can do here is we can actually remove this track so that we can have the audio and video together. So let's take a look at each of these individual tools. Now the first thing you're going to notice is that there is an arrow, and this is going to be an undo tool. And all this does is what the undo tool traditionally does in a Windows program, and that is that if you click it, it'll actually undo your last action. And this can be a good way of being able to go back and retrace your steps if you're going to do editing. Now you can actually redo the last action by clicking the redo arrow. And that's for any action that you take along the timeline area. So if you add something and you want to take it out, you want to go back, you can use the undo and redo command. Now you also have here the cut command. And the cut command can be useful if you are going to take out anything in your video that you don't actually want there that's in a section. So for example, we can actually pull the cursor to a certain point in the video. And then we can then expand the cursor, and we can actually have an entire section of the video, and we can click the cut command, and that entire section will then no longer be in the video. If we want to go back, all we have to do is click the undo button. If we want to return the cursor to its original state, we can double click the cursor. If we want to return the cursor to the home area, all we do is click Control Home. Now the other thing that Camtasia has is it has a copy and paste tool. And Camtasia will actually go to the place where the cursor is, and it will paste whatever you have in your clipboard. So for example, if we Control End and pull our cursor all the way to the end, we can then click the paste command. And you'll notice there that there is a portion that will actually be there, and this is something that we had in the toolbar. Of course, then we can actually go back and undo it and then bring our cursor back home. Now, one last thing that's important to show here is the split command, and this is going to come in handy when we want to take certain actions on the timeline for a particular section of the video. So for example, if we pull our cursor to a certain point, we highlight the places on the timeline, and then we click the split command. Camtasia will literally split the video, and you'll notice that the split is going to be there, and you'll see a little line there that indicates that that portion of the video can be split. We can then pull it to another portion, highlight the video again, and one of the ways that we re-highlight the video is we can hit the control button and then click the mouse, then hit the control button and click the mouse, and then we can then click the split button. And once again, this is going to come in handy when we do transitions. It's also going to come in handy if, let's say, what we wanted to do is we wanted to raise the audio on a specific portion of the video, but we didn't want to raise it on another portion. We could actually do that by splitting up the timeline. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back and we're going to undo both of those actions. Now, one thing that we'll need to do when we're editing is, in some cases, we'll need to see the timeline differently. And we can actually reduce the size that we see on screen by using this measuring bar, and we can actually increase it, decrease it, and increase it. And this will help us when we need to do specific audio editing or even specific video editing in a certain place, and we need to get it so precise that we need to stretch out the audio so we can have our cursor in the exact place where things began. Now you'll also notice that there is a marker here, and we will actually discuss that in a separate video, as we will also discuss quizzing. The one final aspect of the timeline that you'll want to know about is if we were to click just the video portion, what we can do is we can click the properties, and we can get the properties of that particular video. In this case, it's the audio. If we click the video portion, we can actually get the properties of the video. Now, when we do that, there are some aspects of the video that we can actually customize. We can do that from the properties screen. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. In this video, we are going to be discussing the marker function. And you'll notice down near the timeline, if we go to this drop-down arrow, you'll see that there is a marker command there. Now we can either make the marker bar go away, or we can make it come back, and you'll see it visible there. And the marker function allows us to mark places on the timeline, either where we want to create a table of contents for our individual video, or where we want to come back and we want to do something to the timeline. So let's say that there is a special element that you want to edit at a particular point in the video. Well, what you could do is you can mark it where the cursor is, and all you need to do is to go up here and then left click. That'll mark the area. You can then name that, and you'll go up to the right hand side and you'll put in here whatever it is, and you'll see the name there. You can come here and you can do the very same thing again. Just click inside of the marker area. And being able to mark the timeline can be extremely handy when you are actually doing the editing, so that you don't have to go back and redo entire portions. Once you note something that you're going to have to actually do something on the timeline, you'll just want to go and mark it, just like we're doing here. You can also do this by hitting Control-M, and that'll actually create a marker wherever your cursor is. Now let's say that you actually want to mark things while you are recording, and that would make it especially handy. So let's take a look at the recording toolbar. The one thing you're going to want to make sure of is that you have the effects toolbar available. And you can do that by going to your recording toolbars, make sure that the effects are ticked, then click OK, and then you're going to start the recording button. And then while you're doing your recording, what you can do is you can click marker when something happens, or let's say that you're not saying what you want to say in the video, you can click marker, and you can continue to click it, and these markers will appear on your timeline when you actually get ready to edit the video. And this will actually help you to know where to actually go to actually do the edits that you need to do. Of course, you can also use an alternative that we'll be talking about in a future video on editing specifically, but you can use the marker command to your advantage as you go. It's a great way of being able to mark things on the timeline so that you will actually know what's happening. Now, if we want to delete a marker, we can actually go back to the marker and click delete, and then our markers are no longer there. If we want to put them back, we can use the undo command. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we want to discuss very briefly another use for the markers that we talked about in the previous video. And what you can do is you can actually create a table of contents for each individual video. And you can do that by marking your timeline. And for example, we're just going to move the cursor all the way back to the home area. And let's say that you got to the first portion of your video and you wanted to mark this as a point that you wanted people to know that it was a certain information point in your video. Well, you could actually mark that with a marker. And obviously what you want to do at each marker point is you want to write in what the table of contents point is going to be. If this is going to be chapter 1, you want to write that in. And you can write it in as you edit. Point number 2 can be Chapter 2. It's important to note that only certain kinds of videos are you going to be able to use your table of contents. And let's take a look right now. In order to get to the final preparation of our video, we go to the Share, we go to Custom Production, and then we click Custom Production. And what you're going to notice here is that Camtasia will give us the option of using a smart player. This is an option that we'll be able to actually use our table of contents. If we choose any of the other formats, we're not actually going to be able to produce our video with a table of contents. And you'll see that as you progress through the final portion. And you'll notice here that this video can have a table of contents and have a searchable table of contents. We'll talk more about the production options in future videos. It's important to note that for this video, we want to make mention that you can actually use markers in your timeline to denote when you want to have a portion of that video noted in a table of contents. And you can mark it and keep it marked as you produce the final video. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to add quizzes to the timeline. We're going to first start by removing the chapter markings. We're going to do that by going to the Modify command, going to Markers, and then removing all markers. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn this drop-down menu to Quizzes. And in the same way that we added markers to the timeline, we can go to pull the cursor where we want to add a quiz. And then we can then click this green button, which is going to be, and you want to do it online with where the quiz is. So you're going to do that right here. So where the channel is, where you see the quiz, that's where you're going to click in here to add your quiz. So what we're going to do with each quiz is we're going to determine the properties of them. And you can do that in this area. You go to the properties. And if you want to do a multiple choice, fill in the blank, or true, false. In many cases, what you will probably be doing is you will be doing a survey. And if you want to put survey questions at certain points in the video, you can actually do that, and the video will not advance until your client or customer actually finishes the question. Now, when you put these videos together, you will not be able to host them on YouTube. You will need to host them either on your website or on screencast.com. So we have just taken a brief look at how you put quizzes on the timeline. We will go into detail as to what these quizzes mean and how you turn them into surveys so that you can reach your target customer. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to take a little more time with the elements on the side panel. And we're going to go a little more in depth into what they do, as each one of these things will affect what you are doing inside of your video. One of the first things we're going to do is we're just going to clean up our desktop a little bit. So we're going to remove one of these tracks, just so that we'll have the two tracks that we're working on. Now, when you click the media panel, what you're going to notice is that you'll see the media panel go away. If we click it again, the media panel will appear. And what's in the media panel is any recording or any media that we're actually working with. So, for example, at the very beginning of this course, we recorded a video and it automatically populated into the media bin. And that always happens when you do a recording in Camtasia. If we wanted to add to this, we would import a media file into the bin. So for example, let's import a media file. And we can do that by going to this plus, or we can go to the file and we can go to import and import a particular media. So in this particular case, let's just import some media that we might have elsewhere. So we'll click the plus button, and then we'll choose whether or not we import the media or import something from Google Drive. So we will choose something from our hard drive, we'll click open, and then that media will appear in our bin. If we want to pick something that we have recorded previously, we can go to the file area, we can go to import, and we can actually import other recordings that we have done. Now with the media bin, this does not actually do anything to the actual recording until you put it on the timeline. So when you decide on where you want it to appear in your video, all you would do is you would right click this and then add to the timeline at the playhead. And what you're going to notice is that it will appear on a third track. And what that means is that you're going to hear this audio play right on top of all of the other audio. If you wanted to not hear some of the other audio, if you recall, all you'd have to do is highlight that track and delete it. We'll bring it back. And if we were to delete this track, it would no longer be on the timeline, but it would still be in our media bin. So the media bin allows us to work with recordings and allows us to work with everything that we're going to be using in our editing process. Now, the last thing that we'll want to do is something that we haven't done previously in this course. We're going to actually save our project file. And this will preserve the work that we have done so far. And you want to save often because when you are actually doing editing, what you don't want to do is have to go back and redo editing over and over again. So one of the ways in which you control that is you would actually save your project file. So in order to do that, you would go to the file area and you would click save as the first time. So we're going to save this as a name that we'll remember. Now you want to take note of how this project file is named. It's actually going to be named something different than if you have used previous versions of Camtasia. It will not look like something that you have used before. And this is proof that if you want to use previous versions of Camtasia, the two are not compatible unless you convert the file forward to version 9. You actually cannot convert this version back to a previous version. So in this particular case, we're going to call this course file 1, and we're going to click save. And when you completed this, Camtasia will actually let you know that your project has been saved on your hard drive. Now they will give you the option of not showing you this message again. It's suggested that you allow this message to be seen because this will assure you that your project has actually been saved. If you don't get this message, you'll know that the saving process has not been completed and that you might want to try it again. So in this particular case, we've seen our Camtasia project file has been saved, and so what we're going to do is we're going to click OK. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to go to the other side of the media bin, and what we're going to find is we're going to find the media library. The media library has a number of effects that Camtasia, when you purchase the program, gives you in order to enhance your video. And so each one of these can be dropped right into your presentation, and we'll show you how to do that right now. So for example, you'll want to go through each one of these, but they all work basically the same way. So let's start with animated backgrounds. And so you'll see here that you have one that's called floating boxes. And what you can do is you can right click and you can add it to the timeline at the playhead. Now what you'll notice here is that it goes on to a third track. When you add on a new animation, a good practice would be to go to the track and rename the track. So in other words, we would go and rename this track to boxes. Now, in order to alter the box, all we need to do is to drag the timeline in and then to place on the box whatever we want to place it in. In order to preview it before we go to the timeline, all we need to do is to right-click it and then click Preview. And you'll be able to see what this animation is going to look like. When you decide that you do not want to have this animation, all you need to do is highlight it and delete it. Bring your cursor back to the home space, and then you can add another one. We'll preview it. That's not the one that we want. We will take a look at another one. We'll preview it. And then we'll close this one. And then once again, we can add it to the timeline. We can rename our track. So in each case, you'll want to take a look at the different elements. You want to preview them and then add them to the timeline. Now, one thing you'll notice is that there are properties to each one of these elements. And you can do different, and you can alter them in different ways. For instance, you can turn them to give them a different look or revert them back. We can make them more opaque or more invisible. So you want to take a look at the properties to change the image to be what you want. If you want to do something to the image, perhaps you'd like to write on the image, well, all you need to do is to add on an annotation. And what you'll notice when you add on the annotation is that it's going to be on a different track on the timeline. It's going to be the same length as the apartment, but we can actually lengthen it or we can shorten it. So you have a lot of flexibility with the library, and you can do a lot of different things. Anything that you want to do in terms of being able to denote something that you see that you want to illustrate to your audience. So we're going to delete this text and the apartment. And we're going to delete these tracks. And we're going to go back to the media bin. Now, one useful factor, and you'll want to go through each and every one of these media library pieces, and you will want to take a look to see how they can be used in your videos. Now, all of the other graphics are visual in nature, except for the music tracks. And in this particular case, these are music tracks that are royalty free, and you can use them in your videos. You can preview them, and you can add them to the timeline. You can alter their timeline. For example, you can take this particular audio, you can lower the volume. You can do that in the properties, and you'll notice that when you lower the volume, you can actually see that volume visually. So if you want to play background music, you can use some of the clips in your media library. So in each particular case, remember that the process is going to be that you'll want to preview it first. Then you'll want to put it onto the timeline. Then you'll want to drag your cursor into the timeline, and then you want to alter it. Lastly, as we leave the media library, you'll notice that Camtasia has given you something called lower thirds, and this is a way of identifying yourself or identifying something that you see on the screen. In some cases, when you have a talking head video or it is a video of a person talking, you can actually add in an identifier. For example, let's add in the lower third, and what we're going to do is we're going to drag into our timeline, and then what we're going to do is we're going to edit this, and we can double click the timeline. Can change the wording. Okay, we can change the color. Once again, remember, we're going to look at the properties. We're going to change it. and we can reposition any of the library options on the screen there where we want them. We can also determine how long they're going to appear, and we can do that by lengthening the time that they appear or shortening the time. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to take a look at the annotations element. And if you go to the left side menu and you click on annotations, you're going to notice there are going to be 5 different panels here. And the annotations actually give you another element that you can place onto your video at different points in the timeline. So for example, you'll notice that in annotations, you'll find the text element. So if you want to write something on your video to appear, you can do that by dragging this element onto the track. And when you do that and you actually move your cursor, you'll notice that the element will show up inside of the presentation. So in this particular case, we can move this element any place that we want. And as always, we can actually change the element or the nature of the element in the properties area. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the color of the writing, and we can change that in this particular case to black, and you'll notice that that'll change in that case. What we can also do is we can also move this element to a point in time in the video that we want it to show up. So for example, let's say that we didn't want this to appear until midway through the video. We could do that, and so this annotation would not appear until that time. And so there are several ways for us to alter our animation, and all of them will take place inside of the properties area. Now, we can actually do more than one annotation. So for example, if we wanted to do an arrow, all we would need to do is to drag that arrow either into the box, or we can drag it onto the timeline, either one. And we do that. What we're doing here is we are making this arrow a part of the video. And of course, this arrow has an element that we can change. We can make the timing of this element independent of the other one that we placed on the timeline. And you'll notice here that this is going to be on the video longer than the other element that we placed there. So annotations give us lots of flexibility when we want to add things to our video to give us more ways of highlighting things that we want our viewer to see. In the second panel, we have arrows. And arrows work in the very same way. We can drag those arrows onto the timeline. We can rotate those arrows. We can change the nature of those arrows in the properties area. We can even change the thickness of the line. So once again, all of the annotations give us things that we can actually place in the video wherever we want. Now, one of the things you're going to notice about this particular annotation is that Camtasia put it on top of the other ones. So if we were to raise our cursor on the right side, we can see that this is now on track 5. As we said, it's a good practice to rename the tracks so that you know what's there. We have even more options within each one of the annotations in the style area. For example, we can make something bold, or we can make an element what's called urban. Again, we'd be dragging a new element there, or abstract. In the third panel, we have shapes. And in some cases, what we might do is we might pull the cursor forward, and we might add the shape into the presentation at a different point. And so if that's the case, we're just going to drag this element right into our video. We can size this element up. Or size it back down. We have a fourth panel. Now the fourth panel is very important, and there are some elements there that we want to take a few minutes to actually talk about for a minute. Now you're going to notice that first there is a blur element. And the blur element is going to help us if we have personal information that we need to display on our screen. We can actually blur that information out. And one of the ways that we do that is we can then drag this element onto the screen. And you'll notice then that the element becomes blurrier. What's on the screen is going to be blurry to the audience. And we can make that appear as long as we need it to. You'll notice I'm pulling out the timeline. When you are doing screen sharing video and you do not want to show personal information, you will be using the blur key very often. Now, there are some similar keys that we can actually use. We can actually spotlight something. So in this particular case, we can actually bring our cursor and spotlight an element. We're going to take the spotlight out. We can highlight something. Once again, remember, we can alter all of these elements. When we click inside of the element and we go to the properties area, we can pixelate something, which works very similar to the blur, but has a different effect. And once again, we can change this in the properties area. And we can lengthen or shorten it on the timeline. Also in the annotations area, we have the sketch motion callouts. Now also in the annotations area, we have the sketch motion callouts. And sketch motion callouts are very handy to use when you want to highlight something and you want to draw your user's attention. And you can do that by dragging in a sketch annotation. In this particular case, we're going to drag in a loop circle. We're going to have it cover all of this information. So what we want to do is we want to take a look to see how the animation is going to look. We want it to cover the entire section. And with the sketch animation in Camtasia, this is actually going to do motion drawing. And we're going to be able to see this right on our screen. And once again, we can control this element in our properties area. We want to change the color. If we want to change the thickness. And if we even want to change the amount of time that it's going to take to draw the element. We can actually flip the element vertically or horizontally. So again, always remember that when you drag an element in, you can always make changes to how it's actually going to appear by working with the properties. Because this is a special element, one thing we can do is we can see how it's actually going to appear in the timeline in our actual video. So let's do that. All we have to do is pull it to that point in the timeline, then we're going to press play. And you'll notice that Camtasia actually draws on our video. So sketch motion is very handy, and once again, you can have it to appear as long as you like, but you'll still want to control the time that it takes to draw the element in this area. Now, one additional element in the annotations area are going to be what are called keystroke callouts. Now, keystroke callouts are very effective in sharing with your viewer what they need to do in order to replicate your effects that you are doing on your screen. So, for example, let's say that you are clicking Control S for save, and you're doing it at this point in the video. So what would you do? Well, we'd shorten it to just talk about the period of time where the person is going to be talking about Control S, and then we would change this. So you'll see now in the properties area, just as we've seen everything else, we're going to make this Control plus S. And we're going to head to the properties area, and we're going to make this Control S to indicate save. So we're going to place our keys in there, and what we're going to do is we're going to do the motion on our keyboards. We're not going to type in Control S. We're going to hit the Control then S button, and that will appear in this block, and then we'll drag it to the place that we want it to be. Now, let's say that there's a different point in the timeline that you wanted to indicate that your viewer needed to paste something. So we drag the keystone callout either into the timeline or into the video itself. We would time it, and then we would go to the keys and we would click Control V, indicating paste. And so now what we have is another way of being able to get our viewer to understand exactly what they need to do to get the results that we are teaching them. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to work with the transitions element. And on the left-hand side menu, you'll want to go to the transitions. And transitions are a way for you to be able to go from one part of your video to another and give your viewer something to focus on other than a hard edit. So, for example, if we were to go to a place where there was a break and we wanted to start talking about something different, what we need to do in order to implement a transition is that we would need to go to the timeline, highlight all of the elements, and then we'd need to hit the split command. Once we have the split command, we can then use the transitions in order to give our viewer something else to focus on. So, for example, we can choose any of the transitions that you'll see here on the left-hand side panel. They are also divided into certain sections. So if you want to have a fade, if you want to have movement, if you want to have objects, if you want to have a stylized one, or even if you want to have one that wipes. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually drag this transition down to the timeline. And what you're going to notice is that it is going to land the actual video track. Now let's see what the transition is actually going to look like. So we'll back the cursor up, and then we'll hit the play button. And if we look in this area, if we look here, the editor will show us what our transition is going to do. So as you can see, what transitions do is they give us a break so that if you have two ideas and you're trying to share them differently, it's a great way of being able to display to your viewer that something has changed. Now, you can do the same thing with a different kind of object. So all we would need to do if we wanted to delete this transition, right-click it, and then click delete. And then we would drag this transition down to the timeline. So once again, we're going to back this cursor before the transition. And you can see how it's actually going to look with your content. So once again, you are going to go to the timeline where you want the transition to be situated. And let's say that we want it to be situated someplace between these two slides. Now, one thing that you can do to get your transition exactly right is you can actually stretch the timeline. So for example, what we want to do is we want to get it as close to being between these two slides as we can. And we can do that by stretching out the timeline, hitting the plus button. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the exact point where the slide changes. And once we found the space on the timeline that we want to actually have our transition appear, we're going to find the place, and then we're going to hit the split command. That's going to split the video track. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag this transition right down on top of that video track. We're actually going to then take a look to see how it's actually going to look. And what you'll notice is that the process that we just went through actually changes when the slide changes. And we accomplish that by stretching out the timeline and getting the cursor exactly at the point where the slide transitions. And this is a great way of being able to give your viewer an element of variety while they're watching a tutorial. But you can do this with any element that you're actually going to be using. Even if you're using a talking head video, you can do the very same thing. Now, of course, like every other element, if we place our cursor on top of the transition, it actually has its own properties. And we can actually change it in the properties area. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to be discussing the Behaviors tab. And you'll notice that Camtasia will give you the opportunity to cause your entire video to behave in certain ways. And it's an interesting feature to use, but where it's especially used is when you are having an opening sequence. But for the sake of example, let's take a look to see what these behaviors actually do. When we pick a place on the timeline, and let's move the cursor all the way back to the beginning, what we can do is we can drag the behavior that we're looking for, and we can test all of these. And we can test all of them by hovering over them to see what they're going to look like. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to drag one of the behaviors onto the canvas. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to click the play button so we can see what our screen is actually going to do and what the viewer is going to see. As you'll notice, this element has properties. So we can control what happens at the beginning, we can control what happens during the middle, and control what happens during the end. And we can set different aspects of the behavior of our screen. So once again, we're going to go back here to the beginning. And instead of the drifting timeline, we're going to use the fade behavior and drag that into our box. So we're going to take a look at what this is going to actually look like. So you'll see the fade in and fade out. So let's take a look again. Once again, we can control this using the properties and take a look to see what's actually going to happen.
This sample presentation, we'll start with the slide presentation from the beginning, and
so as you can tell, what the behaviors do is they give us a different element for us to be able to give our viewer some variety in seeing our video. Now, the key to understanding how to use these behaviors is to monitor how they look on the timeline, is to use the properties button. If you don't want one there, you can just X out of it. And then to drag them from the behavior section into the canvas. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to be talking about the animations element, and you'll notice that the animations element in the left side panel has two sides, zoom and pan, and animations. So first, let's talk about zoom and pan. Now, what you'll notice is that there are going to be times when you might actually want to zoom in and have your viewer see something that might be too small for them to see just by watching the video. And you can actually do that by doing zoom and pan, and I'll show you what that means. Now, when you do zoom and pan, what you'll want to do is you'll want to take this square by the handles, and you'll want to move it to the place that you actually want to zoom in on. What you'll notice that is happening in the timeline is that there will be an arrow, and that is your zoom and pan arrow, and it's an indication that you have placed an element on the timeline where you were zooming and panning. And what's happening on the screen is that we have zoomed in on this one area, as you can see. Now, just like any other element, we can actually control that element by clicking on the element and by using the properties area. So what could happen is that your video would progress, and then you'd want to go back to the regular size. You'd want to have your video show the entire screen. You can do that by going to Scale to Fit just by clicking this button. And you'll notice then that your screen will show the full size. And this can be a handy tool when you have to record a part of the video that will be too small for your viewers to see. And what you'll notice is that we have two arrows on the timeline. Both arrows indicate zoom and pan. One indicates that we zoomed in, the other one indicates that we zoomed out. Now, you can also use the animations feature, and there are 10 to speak of, and we'll briefly go through each one of them. Now, to do that, we're going to advance the video slightly by moving the cursor. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually pull each one onto the timeline so that you can see what actually happens. So in the custom area, we can pull our zoom and pan here. And what happens is we can actually customize what actually happens, and we control that inside of the properties area. If we don't want the animation, we click it and click delete. We can actually use the restore. And you'll notice what happens is it actually restores the screen to where it was. So in other words, it looks backwards, it skips the last animation, and it brings the screen back to where it was for this animation. And you can see that here. Once again, we can control this in the properties area. So now we're going to click delete. We can bring in an animation that has no opacity, right, or no see-through nature. Or we can bring in one that has full opacity. We can bring in the element that says tilt to the left. And as you'll notice, our screen tilts to the left. We can control how much in the properties area. And we can do the same thing tilting to the right. We can actually have an animation that will scale up. And then one that will scale down. The last animation that we'll be talking about can be done on any point in the timeline or any section of the timeline. So we could choose a section of the timeline and we could place here, and what we want to do is we want to use the smart focus. And so what we're going to do is we're going to drag the smart focus into one area. And what you're going to notice is that Camtasia Studio will tell us that to apply smart focus animations, the editing dimensions need to be smaller than the media that we're using. So right now we're using full screen, we're using full size. So as long as the dimensions are smaller, we'll be able to use zoom and pan, which it will be. And so we can choose our settings to make sure it is smaller. We can use fit to visible, or we can customize it. We can customize it for any device. So in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to customize it for 480p and click apply. Since you'll be using this feature often, we'll be taking a closer look at the smart focus element all by itself in a future video. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Okay, so what we're going to do is record a sample video so that we can put it on the timeline so that we can show you the rest of the features that are part of the elements on the left side panel. So we're going to click this record button, and then we're going to record some clicks, some other things on this Snagit page, and then we're going to bundle up this video, and then we're going to allow it to be placed on the timeline. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click the file, and we're going to click import profiles, and then we're going to dismiss that one, and we're going to click the capture menu, and we're going to click the view menu, and then the tools menu, and the help menu. And then we are going to take a look at these three elements on the screen. And then we're going to take a look at one of these elements, and this will give us enough to take a look at what we're doing. Okay, so we're looking at this element, and we're going to click yes. And now we have enough to go to the timeline. So we're just going to click the stop button. So we click the stop button, you'll notice our video populates this area. You'll see the sound coming in. And so now we have a video to work with that we can then show you cursor effects, voice narrations, audio effects, visual effects, and interactivity. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video.
Thank you for watching our show. You can do IT yourself. Please watch us in this same channel for more. Today our show was brought to you by TechSmith, creators of Camtasia 9, and by Vegas 5, creators of Sharp Social. For your comments and suggestions, please send us an email to support@successclips.com. This has been a presentation of You Can Do IT Yourself. Thank you for joining us.